who is a reporter for Ars Technica, a leading website to learn about law in the information age. So this is a journalist, he's a radio producer, he's an author, he's reported for the leading publications in this area, the Wired, the New York Times, English, CBC, Public Radio, NPR, etc. He has a book, published by Rutgers Press, The Internet Elsewhere. And he has his education from Berkeley and then from Columbia School of Journalism. It's my delight to welcome Cyrus, who will talk about local surveillance. So our goal in this series is to look at issues of surveillance around the world, and we thought what better than to begin by looking here at home, by looking particularly at Oakland. Thanks, Cyrus.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. All right. I'm just going to talk with my mouth and my hands. There won't be slides, so you can look at that. How many people read Ars Technica? Any Ars Technica readers? Hey, that's awesome. All right, the rest of you should read it right now. Anybody here live in Oakland, where I live? Cool, a few people. Awesome. All right. So yeah, I'm a journalist. I'm not a lawyer. How many lawyers or law students in the room? Almost everyone. Okay, cool. So you guys know the law much better than me. So if I say something dumb, feel free to correct me. I frequently read legal opinions. I go to court, not a lot, but often enough. I talk to a lot of your colleagues here at UC Davis, at other law schools. I try to understand the law as best I can. I get it wrong sometimes. I get angry emails. That's cool. So I am somebody who is very interested in where the law intersects with technology. I spend my days in front of my computer, reading news, learning about stuff, and trying to figure out what's going on in the world, and more specifically, having to do with what we're talking about here. Surveillance and policy and law and privacy and where these things all kind of come together. And I'm often, when I'm sitting in front of my computer, I'm often reminded of this quote by a early 21st century philosopher, really great British philosopher, Ali G, who once said, "Technology, is it good or is it whack?" And this is a question that I wrestle with every day when I'm in front of my computer. And I don't have a good answer. It's really tricky. Surveillance is one of those things that does good stuff, and it does pretty whack stuff too. When we talk about surveillance, there's like big scary things like the NSA and like capturing everyone's emails on the internet and under the ocean, all that kind of stuff, and Edward Snowden and all this sort of stuff. And then it trickles all the way down to not only the Oakland Police Department, the like big law enforcement agency where I live, but also stuff even smaller than that. I don't know, for those of you who live maybe here in Davis or in the Sacramento area or even in Oakland, I've definitely seen on streets a few blocks away from my front door people who put up cameras on both sides of the block pointing out. So scanning every single car and bike and baby and stroller and whatever that is coming in both directions. So I sort of think of that as almost like the nano NSA. Like it's like the teeny tiny NSA that only cares about this one little block. And that's the world we live in now, right? I've seen examples of this in a few parts of Oakland where I live. And I imagine, we were just having this conversation earlier, so one of the things that's like both, again, good and whack about technology is that it gets better and cheaper and more widespread all the time. And that definitely applies to surveillance technology. So, just as, right now, what I'm going to talk about a little bit, my plan is to talk for about the next 20 or so minutes. And then what I'm really interested in is to hear what you guys have thought about, know about. You can tell me how much of an idiot I am. Correct me if I got the legal theory wrong. Or whatever, around 12:30, and I'd love to have a discussion with you. So, one of the things that we have that exists, in addition to those cameras that's pointed at the end of every street, are things called license plate readers. I think maybe there were some links that were in earlier. Did some people read maybe my license plate reader article? Okay, a few people did. Raise your hand if you did read the article. Okay, so 2 people. I will summarize it. Apologies if you already know this. I am a license plate reader obsessive. I am somebody who had never heard of license plate readers until a couple of years ago. I found by reading the blog of the ACLU Massachusetts that they were going to be voting on this license plate reader. And I thought, well, what the heck is a license plate reader? What's a license plate reader? It is a device, a camera, that's about this big. Typically, they're mounted in front of the light bars on a police car. Right? So if you can imagine a police car, there's the flashing lights on the top, and the camera sits right there, right in front. What it does is it scans, it points out at the street, and there's typically 2, one on each side, and they point out. And they scan at very high speed, 60 plates per second, typically. Cars traveling in every which way around that car, right? So imagine right here outside Davis, you have the Davis PD, there's Davis PD, right? Yeah. Driving down the street, scanning all the cars as they see them. What do they do with that? They see, let's say my car, I actually bike here, but let's assume I have a car. They roll by and they scan my car and they read the plates, they read the plate number, and they check it against, I mean, I don't know how many of you guys have been in a police car recently, but pretty much all police departments in the country now have like laptops, right, mounted inside the police car. So that camera is then connected to that computer, and it's checking against the database, and it says, okay, does this plate that I'm seeing, this unknown plate, does it match my hot list, my list of wanted cars, stolen cars, Amber Alerts, terrorism suspects, whatever? And if it does, then flash and tell the officer that this is a bad car, this is a bad dude, and we should pull him over or do something, right? If it's not, then we're going to keep that data. And we're going to keep that data for a week, a month, a year, 2 years, 5 years, who knows? It depends on the city, it depends on the county, it depends on the state. In the case of Oakland, they were keeping the data. There was no formal limit as to how long they could keep the data. So I wrote an article, I've written a bunch of articles, but I wrote one that basically where I used the California Public Records Act, the public records process that exists in California. And I said, dear Oakland Police Department, please give me all of the license plate reader records that you have ever collected. And over the next several months, I got 20 Excel spreadsheets, each of which were hundreds of thousands of lines long, that totaled over 4.3 million license plate reads that had been scanned in the city of Oakland. That gave me the plate number, fully unredacted, the date, the time, the precise GPS location. So I have now in my possession on my computer right over there, all of that data. Please don't steal my laptop. We at our Technica worked with somebody who built a very simple web tool where we converted that huge database, because I'm an idiot and don't know how to make one myself, maybe you do, into a map where you could just punch in a plate and it would basically plot, like on Google Maps, like where that car had been seen. So I obviously used my own car as the first test case. And I discovered that the Oakland Police Department had seen me in different parts around the city. Didn't show anything weird, but it was nonetheless a little bit disconcerting as I drilled down into the data and I started, with people's permission, because I'm interested in privacy, asking people like, hey, do you want to know like where the OPD has seen your car? And lots of people were like, yeah, sure. So they gave me their plate and I ran it and it showed them. And I went and I contacted all the members of the Oakland City Council. One of them wrote back to me, and I interviewed him. He represents District 1, North Oakland. Anybody from North Oakland? Couple people, cool. Dan Kolb is the council member, if you're keeping score at home. So I went and I saw Dan Kolb in his office in City Hall one day, and I said, hey, I have this thing. Do you want me to run your plate? And he was like, sure. So I pulled up, I don't know anything about Dan Kolb. I'm sure he's a nice person. I sat down in front of him and I pulled up on my map, he gave me the plate number, and it showed that the Oakland Police Department over the last 4 years had scanned him primarily in front of City Hall, makes sense, he's a council member, parks on the street, and in his home district in North Oakland. And not only were they in North Oakland, but they were on one particular block in North Oakland, right, where he parks probably in front of his house. And I said, okay, I don't know where he lives. I said, I bet you live on this particular block in North Oakland. And he was like, yeah, I do. And I was like, Isn't that weird? I just got all this data and I just guessed where you lived. And so that, I think, is one of the issues with this data, is that police departments, law enforcement agencies around the country, this is being used not just by the Oakland Police Department, but this is being used by the FBI, this is being used by state, county sheriffs, state law enforcement agencies, and they're just keeping it. And I think, I want to believe that law enforcement are using this data responsibly. So if you go to them and you say, hey, why do you need this data? Why do you want to keep this for a week or a month or however long? And they say, well, we need it to catch bad guys. We need to catch stolen cars. Wouldn't you, if your child was abducted and some dude had driven off into the sunset, wouldn't you want to know, wouldn't you want a better way to find him? Of course you would. Nobody likes bad guys. Everybody wants to catch bad guys using whatever tools possible. Here's the problem with that. The problem with that is, if you go to the OPD or any other law enforcement agency, you ask them, okay, how many of the plates that you've scanned match your hot list? In other words, what is your hit rate, right? So if you take the ones that match the hot list, the wanted cars, stolen cars, divided by the total number of cars you've scanned, what is the answer? The answer is less than 1%, right? A fraction, a tiny, tiny fraction, or match the hit rate. In Oakland, it was actually 0.4%, right? So that's a little weird. and the other problem is that in the case of Oakland, if you get enough data, you can imagine, not only can you use it to figure out where somebody lives or where somebody works, you can create sort of a pattern of behavior, but you could run through all kinds of other more nefarious scenarios, right? You could say, okay, with my sweet little database that I made, or that the guy who made it for me made, you could say, all right, show me all of the plates that were parked within a quarter-mile radius of Oakland City Hall during Occupy Oakland. If I was the police, I might be interested in that. Show me all the plates that were parked in front of all the mosques in Oakland on every Friday afternoon for the last year. Show me all the plates that were parked in front of all the marijuana dispensaries every Saturday afternoon for the last 6 months. Right? All of those things that I just described are people parking their cars that, one, may not have anything to do with those activities, marijuana, the mosque, etc., but they're perfectly lawful, right? And that's one of the qualms that I have about how this technology is used, is that you can use it to establish, you can use it to infer stuff that may not be real. This was used in New York not very long ago. The Associated Press did an investigation where they found that the NYPD was doing exactly this, that they were routinely scanning around all the mosques in Brooklyn for a period of several months, within a certain radius of various mosques. And if I was going to that mosque, I would be a little bit creeped out that there were cops just driving around just scanning everybody for no reason. And then, again, on the plus side, there was this recent, you guys may remember, there was this former TV journalist in Virginia who shot other TV journalists on camera and then ran away. Yeah, he was busted by a license plate reader, right? So that's good. Again, everyone wants to bust bad guys, and people who's killing other people obviously should be arrested and obviously should be prosecuted and put in jail. But in that case, that guy was caught, you might remember, what was it, something like 2 or 3 hours after the event happened, right? They knew the plate, they knew he had a rental car, they knew the plate of the rental car, and they punched into the thing. I think it was a Virginia Highway Patrol, or maybe it was a neighboring state, I don't remember. Was able to see him as he passed by and got up to him and arrested him, and I think he shot himself, I think is how that's arranged. But that is to say that, I feel like that's a very different scenario than keeping the data for a long period of time. So, as law students, if you're interested in helping people like me, journalists, or activists, or other people that are out in the world that are desperately trying to penetrate how this stuff is used, please either see me after, email me, whatever, get in touch with me or other journalists, because we need your help, honestly. We need legal help to be able to use the public records. I got lucky, the fact that Oakland gave me all this data. It happens more often than you might think, that I write to agencies and they say, hey, give me this set of data, or give me these documents, or give me these records, and they don't. And they cite exemption X, or exemption Y, or exemption Z, and you can't do this, and I appeal, and they say no, and it's really annoying. So I need your help. Really, I mean it. So when you're out of law school, when you're barred up and ready and looking for fun things to do, please get in touch with me. So that's sort of chapter 1 is license plate readers. Chapter 2 is stingrays. Anybody heard of stingrays? A couple people, probably from reading my stories, maybe. Stingrays are a type of mobile phone surveillance device. Anybody here watch The Wire? Okay, if you haven't watched The Wire and you're interested in privacy, you should go home and like, you know, on Christmas break or something and watch The Wire. It will change your life. There's an episode in The Wire where Detective McNulty, The Wire is set in city Baltimore and it focuses on cops and drug lords and it's much more complicated and interesting than that, but you should watch it. There's a scene in The Wire where Detective McNulty is one of the protagonist characters. He finds out that his department has one of these devices, a Stingray, that's been sitting in the Baltimore PD closet for years, that has the ability to basically capture cell phone signals out of the air, essentially to trick cell phones into giving up their location, right? By basically spoofing them, essentially, into thinking that it's a cell tower when it's not, right? All of our phones are great and useful, and you know, we all, if you're like me, you live and die by your phone. But it turns out that in order to be able to have this beautiful cell phone service that we all enjoy, that is yet another way that the government can surveil us or surveil those that we care about. It's a tracking device. It's a really good tracking device, actually. I don't know about you, but my phone is in my pocket right now. My phone is a really good proxy for me. My phone is pretty much, I would say, you know, 9 times out of 10 is within arm's reach of where I am. I would guess that that's true for a lot of you, if not all of you. It's, you know, on my bedside table when I go to sleep. It's where I am. So if you know where my phone is, you know where I am. Cops know that. So there's this device that is manufactured largely by a company that's called the Harris Corporation, Harris.com, H-A-R-R-I-S. They're publicly traded. They're a defense contractor. You might stock in them if you want to. They make a device that was originally for the military and for U.S. intelligence, and it does exactly what I described. It spoofs cell phone signals and forces phones to give up their location. And in some cases, it can also intercept text messages and calls. So from as best as we, and when I say we, I mean those of us who don't work in government, journalists, activists, lawyers, as far as we can perceive and understand using public records, using documents that various police and law enforcement agencies have had to give up in court. The domestic local law enforcement version of this only does the location, but it has the capability, but they don't use it, or it's turned off, or something, we're not clear. It doesn't do the interception part. Okay, so again, if you're a cop, you want to catch bad guys, right? Of course you do. If you have this device at your disposal, that's awesome. Like it's super, like, you know, and most people don't know about this. Like you guys, super smart law students, don't know about it. If you don't know about it, probably there's a good chance that, you know, dumb criminals don't know about it either. So that the cops take advantage of that. And so they use it to go out and locate people, and they do it for not only like really terrible, awful things, kidnapping, rape suspects, murder suspects, terrorism suspects, all that, you know, kind of high level, really serious crime that we want all the tools to be thrown at the cops to catch the person, but also for dumb things like 911 hangups, for muggings over somebody's phone, or, you know, relatively minor crimes. That's also happening. So I feel like that's a little bit weird. It's also weird because the cops aren't very transparent in general about how they use this technology. So, for those of you who have studied criminal law a little bit, and you probably know a lot more about it than I do, so again, correct me if I'm wrong, but usually in a criminal law situation, you know, the cop has to write a criminal affidavit, a search warrant application to a judge, and they say, hey, dear judge, we think that Cyrus is a bad guy, we think he's a drug dealer, we think we're going to find, we have probable cause that we're going to find evidence of a crime in his house. We're going to find drugs, we're going to find weapons, whatever. And they detail this out. Yes, did I get that roughly right? Okay, good. So they detail that stuff, and they take it to the judge, and the judge's like, yeah, cool, Cyrus, we think Cyrus is a bad dude, we're going to totally search his house. Fourth Amendment, good stuff, right? Probable cause, all that stuff. Search warrants. Problem is that when cops use a Stingray, they don't get a warrant, right? What happens is they're using another section of the law, which at the federal level at both the federal level and at the state level, there's two equivalents. They're both called a pen register. Have you ever heard that term before? Okay, pen register, yeah. So there's state pen register statutes and there's a federal pen register statute. Not every state has a pen register statute, which creates a whole other set of issues. basically what happens is the cops write, rather than write the search warrant affidavit, they write a pen register application, right? So they say, dear judge, we want to use a pen register against Cyrus, we think he's a bad dude. No probable cause, right? The legal standard is way lower. It's relevance to an investigation, which who the heck knows what that means? Like, and if you look at the statute, that's what it says. And a pen register in the pre-cell phone days basically would allow the police to go to AT&T or whatever telco and get the phone records, right? Essentially, basically a live call log, right? I called my friend, I called my dad, I called whoever, right? And like, I called them for the metadata of the call, right? The problem is that when the cops are using pen registers now, this is the legal document that they're giving to judges. And so the judges are like, okay, we know what that is. This law has been on the books for decades. No problem. They sign off on it. So what then ends up happening is then the cops interpret that to mean, okay, we're just going to use the stingray, because the stingray essentially is acting as the pen register. But it's doing more than that. It's giving them the location as well, right? So that's a problem. And the judges typically don't know what it is that they're signing off on. So there have been examples in different parts of the country, in North Carolina, in Washington State, a little bit here in California starting, where judges are sort of waking up to the fact, through journalists, through activists, through lawyers, are kind of waking up to the fact that like, hey, this is not what we signed off on. This is not what you said you were doing. We don't like that. And it's up to defense attorneys, for those of you who are maybe thinking about defense field, it basically only comes up when defense attorneys challenge it in court. And then, if you read, and I linked to this in my article, there are these non-disclosure agreements that exist between the FBI and local law enforcement. And they're pretty much all the same. And there's language there that says something like, you, local law enforcement agency, will agree that anytime you get a records request or legal request or anything, you will basically not disclose any information at all about this device and how it works and how you use it, unless you get permission from the FBI. You may even drop cases, drop prosecutions, and that's happened in Baltimore actually. And other places around the country, where when an enterprising defense attorney gets up and like questions the detective on the stand and has them explain how they found the dude in the house where they found all the drugs, then the case has been dropped because they don't want to reveal their secrets. And that's a little weird, that there's this device that exists that the cops are really, really, really trying hard to protect. Washington State very recently passed a law, a few months ago, a state law that says not only do you have to have a warrant requirement, but in the affidavit, the cop has to fully explain what the device does, how it works, and more importantly, and I should have said this earlier, not only if a police agency is using a stinger against me, let's say they were targeting me right now in this room, that device would be capturing the data from all of your phones because you're all sitting right next to me. You're all within a very close proximity to me. So there's a lot of incidental data collection. You just happen to be here, even though you have nothing to do with the crime that I'm being suspected of, right? So if you care about your privacy, you don't want the cops to just like randomly, incidentally collect all this data. Remember the license plate reader thing? It's like, you can imagine there's probably an order of magnitude or more of extraneous data that's just being collected out of the air. So in Washington right now, the cops have to say, we will delete all this data if it has nothing to do with this investigation within a week or some period of time. I forget the number. In California, we don't have a law like that. There's actually a new bill that is pending in California. This is the California Electronic Communications Privacy Act, CAL-ECPA, which would establish a warrant requirement. And the federal government, the Department of Justice, recently issued a document that says, you, FBI, you, ATF, all the other law enforcement agencies, you, DEA, agencies that are under the kind of umbrella of the DOJ, so not Homeland Security, not the CIA, you should get a warrant. There's other questions about that particular document, but there is movement now to push for a stronger warrant standard. Today, right now, in Alameda County, the Alameda County Board of Supervisors is voting whether or not to approve federal grant money to buy an upgraded version of the Stingray for use in Alameda County by the Oakland Police Department and other local law enforcement agencies. So this is happening right now, all over the country, right in our own backyard, right in my literal backyard. I guess it's not literal because my backyard isn't the court building, but whatever. So yeah, so these are kind of tools that are out there and that are not very well known and that are slowly coming to the fore as more documents come out, more court cases come out, as more and more of these things are being aware, made aware through the public. And I repeat, I say again, we need your help. We really need your help to file suits against various agencies and get these documents to light, because when I mentioned this company, Harris, I just was emailing them yesterday, they won't talk to me. They won't answer my questions. And the fact of the matter is they don't have to. They're not accountable. The government should, theoretically, be accountable to us the citizenry, right? We should be able to get questions from how the government works, hopefully. We need the legal system and we need lawyers to do that. So please, we need your help. The last thing that I wanted to touch on is kind of where this is going and kind of the near-term future of surveillance and privacy at the local level. We talked about license plate readers, we talked about stingrays. There's also things that are kind of on the verge of coming out, but that are not quite ubiquitous enough yet to be in possession by the Oakland Police Department, for example. How many people own a drone? Really? Two people in this room own a drone, okay? How many people have flown a drone? A few more hands, okay. Drones are interesting, right? Yeah. Imagine a drone with a license plate reader or a stingray on it, right? Already right now, the government is flying Cessna planes, like small planes, not like big airliners, but smaller planes with a version. So when I say stingray, that's kind of a generic. It's like Kleenex. It's like a trademark that refers to the generic. There are other companies besides Harris that make them, but Harris is the big one. There's another device made by the company Boeing that's often referred to as a dirt box, DRT box, BOX, that are put up on planes that are flown over cities and are doing some kind of aerial cell phone surveillance. That's creepy and weird. But imagine something like that getting smaller and being put on a drone, right? Imagine the Oakland Police Department in a year, 2 years, 3 years, flying one of these things over a protest, over the next time people decide that they want to protest police brutality or whatever it is, as they should, and are capturing from above people's cell phones, right? Or imagine, so right now where drones are in a weird sort of situation where believe it or not, you as an individual, you can go right now and order a DJI Phantom drone for a few $100 or other types of drones that are out there, and just fly them like in your yard on UC Davis campus, whatever. And unless you're doing something dumb like flying it near an airport, don't do that. Or flying it to like snoop on somebody or whatever. If you're just like flying in the park, and maybe you've seen this when you've just been out in the world, you just like see drones. You're just like starting to see drones now. I don't know about you, but like I'm always like, oh, like that's happening now, like in my like normal life. And you just like see them, and it's just like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. But so the police are also buying drones because they're available and they're useful. They can go places where people can't go. They go where places that helicopters can't go. It turns out, this is the thing about surveillance, right? Surveillance in the past was hard and powerful, but also expensive, right? So like, that's the thing. That's the thing about where we run into this sort of issue. Is like before, if you wanted to like spy on somebody's communications on their phone or their movements, you'd have to like set up you'd have to like use a person and get them moving around, and like that's expensive and difficult, But now if you get a drone that like they're not gonna maybe see or hear, and it costs what, $500 to buy the thing, and it costs basically nothing to fly it, then why wouldn't the cops' job is not to care about privacy. The cops' job is to catch bad guys, right? Our job is to worry about privacy. So this is why I say again, we need your help. So if the cops want to use drones to fly over a protest or fly over somebody's backyard, they can do that. When right now, lots of police agencies, I know, for example, the San Jose Police Department has drones. The Los Angeles Police Department has drones. There are other law enforcement agencies that are interested or are in the process of acquiring them, and the only reason why they haven't been deployed yet is because they're a police agency, they need special permission from the FAA to do that, the Federal Aviation Administration. So that hasn't happened yet, but it will happen soon. Okay, very last thing, and then I want to open it up to questions. With license plate readers, if I can just go back to that for a second, one of the kind of underlying legal argument that the police make as to why they have the authority to do this in the first place is this idea of a reasonable expectation of privacy in public. People are maybe nodding their heads knowing roughly what I'm talking about? Okay. So that means that they can, if you're out in the public, you have less rights in terms of privacy than you do in your house or in a hotel room, right? Okay. So what happens when either on a drone or on a police car or on a body camera, all Oakland police officers now have body cameras that they wear in their chest. They're about the size of an iPhone if you haven't seen one. These are, again, in the wake of Ferguson, are being widely spread around the US. What happens when those cameras have facial recognition? What happens when a police officer walking down the street has a camera on his or her chest that is scanning faces and matching that to not only a government database, but let's say Facebook, or let's say the internet, or let's say Google image search, right? What happens when the cops can match, the fact that you were, or let's say, me, let's say that I was walking out of a sex toy shop on Lakeshore Avenue in Oakland on Saturday morning. Maybe I don't want the cops to know that. Similar with the license plate readers, right? There's a lot of, again, with the license plate readers and some of these other things, there's a lot of constitutionally protected activity that we all engage in on a regular basis that, in my view, should not be collected by the government, or there should be a large hurdle for them to be able to collect that type of information. They should be able to use that technology to catch bad guys. They should, God forbid, get a warrant. That's what it's there for. Is sort of my feeling. But, so I'm going to stop there and open this up to questions. But yeah, the long and the short of it is, we need your help. And this is just kind of an unstoppable force. And it's just continually going and will continue to get bigger and badder and more ubiquitous as time goes on. So thank you for your attention. And yeah. Question?